podcast. I am Matt George.
And I'm Mark Zockel. We're here to talk to you today more about tough conversations. We're here to talk to you about conversations that are not easy.
I'm so excited.
If we keep a smile on our face as we talk about it, it will be a better conversation.
Everything's an easy conversation when you're smiling.
Everything is awesome.
Okay, let's.
Everything is new. It's part of a team.
Okay. That went somewhere. Did not expect.
I've forgotten this song often, and my wife completely appreciates it. She one time said, you know the guy who sings Jean Verger or Valjean?
Yes.
Javert.
Yes.
He sounds like me. That's what she said one time.
Really?
Yeah, like the Russell Crowe version of that guy.
Oh, okay.
Or like,
interesting.
Yeah, he sounds like me.
Okay.
Sometimes I sound like him.
Well, we need to get into. I hate to say this to you, Mark, but it's time to have a tough conversation.
Javert.
Javert. Oh, my word.
Jean Valjean.
Maybe this is a good time to go to our partner.
Let's hear from that brand partner right now.
All right, we're back, and we do have a serious conversation. Besides how we introed this podcast,
a serious conversation about a hard thing.
Yeah. So this is again a follow up. This is a second part to a series of tough conversations with faculty. We've already done one on instructional improvement that I felt was a very good conversation.
Of course it was.
So
we had it.
If I do say so myself.
Listen, these were fan provided. These
Correct.
were follower provided, follower asked for. So we're excited about that.
Yeah. So the topic today is digging into policy enforcement.
Policy enforcement.
So we've already had the tough conversations of how they can be better teachers, better within the classrooms. But now it's the professionalism.
Yep.
It's where are we missing those marks, and how do we pick them up?
And so, what are some of the policies we think about when we think about policy enforcement with teachers? We're going to think about whatever is in a contract. And as we were brainstorming for this episode and thinking through it, we think of what are the common ones, and we think they would include dress code if there is a dress code in there. We imagine that most of you would, but we know that there's some who don't, so it could be either way. We would think about issues of moonlighting, perhaps, issues which come from having a secondary employment which affects the current. We could think of issues occurring from any kind of, if there's a church attendance policy or some kind of character policy that then comes up, if the school and the ministry takes a stance on something like drinking, or if it takes a stance on something like where the character clause in the contract would be, transgressed. And that's not just, let's not think that this is just a Christian school industry issue. We see NFL players and we see others who have parts of their contract would include character clauses, and they would be deemed conduct detrimental, and they would be disciplined in some way. So we don't
do professional athletes still have curfews? That used to be a thing. Is that still a thing?
I was just listening to the Ravens players when they are away and they have a night game on a Sunday. So they would have in the hotel room time by a certain time on a Saturday evening. And then the tough part is keeping them in the hotel the rest of Sunday, because you don't want them to leave Sunday. So yes, some teams do, some teams don't.
Which makes sense, because you when you are investing in a very big amount of money in these individuals, you want them to be on their A game. So it makes sense that part of that contract is, you're not going to be out partying all night prior to that big game.
And in the daytime, you're also going to be thinking ball all day.
Right. And I guess even going to other policies, you threw out there even moonlighting, but even, attendance.
Sure.
Just straight up showing up,
being on time,
whether it's to your morning meetings or your devotions, or you have a specific time, you have to be here by this point, so that again you are prepared once the students arrive. So all of these different policies that you as a school leader and as a school program have decided, in order to have the professionals and the professionalism within the school that we want, these policies are in place.
They have to stay in place. We have to have them. McDonald's has them.
Yep.
I chafe against the thought that I chafe against the thought that the schools could exist without these, to be honest. Even the most free-minded
Yeah.
they still need directions in the parking lot.
Yeah.
They still need so on and so forth, and we as well.
Now, this could be a topic for another time, but it still boggles my mind that McDonald's can have their policies for their employees,
Mm-hmm.
but as soon as a church school
Yes.
or a Christian school puts out a
Yeah.
policy or a standard, it's suddenly legalistic.
Absolutely.
But we're not talking about that.
No.
We're talking about
or at the very least, we're not going to give that the light of day.
Right.
I'm not going to give that conversation any
it's
credence
just
because
it's
we
ridiculous.
are human. We are human resource managers, officers, as well as administrators and whatnot. And just as much as my wife has when she goes into her job as a nurse practitioner, and she can either wear scrubs or professional dress. Professional dress means something.
Yes.
And if she were to show up in, low cut, high cut, whatever it happens to be, she would be asked to leave.
Yeah.
And no one would second guess that.
Yeah.
In that industry, it would not be second guessed. But here, we get lambasted with, well, you're legalistic and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And that's just, and I'm not saying that other industries don't have issues of, for example, we presented at our conference, at a teacher's conference, and James presented with us, and we've had James on the podcast before, and he'll be on again because he's a great friend, and he'll be presenting with us, and he wrote with us. If you haven't read that, we're in the American Association of Christian Schools journal. But one of the things he said, we went to the conference that we presented at was, well, while there may be many conferences in this industry that still wear or expect professional dress to be XYZ, specifically ties and a suit and whatever else, if we were to look at industries such as the one that I find myself in at the $5,000 fee entry just to get into the thing or whatnot, you're going to see a lot more just jeans and t-shirt walking around and even presenting on a stage. So we are in that time, and we're not saying that we're not in a time of more informal dress, even in a professional world. So that has to be it's some way nuanced, provided with context. But we are where we are, and whatever the school decides to be the policy is the policy. Man, we parked on dress too much already. I don't.
I think it
just shows more.
You parked on dress, but it carries over because even thinking back to our trans skins. When we had our conversation about the teacher titles.
Yeah,
it's the exact same thing in that, us demanding, students to show respect via how they are addressing, that goes to secular companies that say, if we are going to show professionalism, you refer to them as sir or ma'am. You don't, it has nothing to do with Christian principles.
Well, we have the local university, Salisbury University is very close to us, and they have a ginormous business program. I sound like the former president. Huge. It's a huge business. They have a program. They have a well-esteemed business program that is a flagship program of the university. There's a better way of saying that. And they have Top Flight Thursdays. It's either Top Flight Thursdays or Top Flight Tuesdays, or Top Floor. Either way, they expect their business students to show up in professional dress for their classes.
Yeah.
So you see on those days students showing up, freshmen to senior level students showing up, and they look good. They look as though they're about to walk into their Fortune 500.
Yeah. So now that we gave a thorough justification as to why we have standards and why we have policies,
and all wrapped around dress, not yet. We transcend dress.
Yeah. The question is, now how do you approach the teachers that are infringing
boots on the ground
those policies?
Let's get practical with it. What do we do? We're going to have to start with, is it written down? What do you have written down in your contract? Because if you don't have it written down in your contract, if you don't have it written down in your handbook, your faculty manual, you are on thin ice to begin with, and that's not a good place to be. As you would well know, because you have often stood on frozen lakes in you probably never did that. Your wife did.
Oh, I did.
You did?
Yeah.
I never did that.
Come on. Well, you're okay.
I've never ice fished in my life.
Pennsylvania and all. Yeah. No. It gets cold.
Is it harrowing? Is it harrowing to stand on thin ice? By all accounts of the idiom,
It depends on how heavy you are.
Okay. Well,
It would be more harrowing today for me than it was back in the days of yore,
yo, Tommy, yeah.
when I would just run right out onto the pond and
Skip right out.
yeah.
So if we are going to have conversations with faculty members concerning whatever they have transgressed or perceived to have transgressed, the conversation should not be starting outside of whatever the bounds of the contract or the faculty manual are. I imagine that in these conversations, or in those manuals that are established, if you're trying to establish your own or reestablish yours, we should begin with who are involved in those conversations. It shouldn't be a principal's job if it's the administrator's job or the head of school's job to have that conversation with the lower. It shouldn't be somebody passing, some office worker passing that move off to, it shouldn't be that the administrator asks somebody else to get involved with that if that's not the person who is expected to be involved with it. I'd also say if it is, I hate doing this again, go back to the dress, if it is something that perhaps is a little bit more
time sensitive,
male female, more nuanced in that way. If there is a question, there probably should be something written down in the policies concerning, okay, as a ministry, if it is a school ministry, if it is a church ministry in the school of the church, or even if it's independent, how are those going to be handled? Will they be handled with a third party in the room? Will they be handled with just the glass door of the office, or be handled, or whenever you sit down with somebody, will it be an open door, glass door, closed door? How do those conversations work? And really, what's good practice in that situation? It's probably best practice in the other situations as well.
Yeah.
And is it going to be that you have these conversations at a certain time of the day, or is it as soon as possible? Maybe that's where you're going with the time.
Well, yeah. I mean,
to some extent.
if it's something to where, like, okay, this is an infringement where if we just wait until an appointed time, it's going to be too late.
Sure.
So if we want to stick with dress code, if the dress code is so egregious that you're going to be sending a message to not only students but parents and other teachers, and you need to get on top of that one right away. Or even if it's something where you have, let's get away from dress, but you have a faculty member that just completely loses their mind and throws desks, that's going to be something that has to be addressed immediately, as opposed to, you know what, let's meet after school.
Yeah, your attendance has been, you've been tardy too many times now. We've got to talk about that.
Yeah, the things that aren't as egregious. It's just maybe over time things are being brought up, maybe a negative attitude, maybe it's something to the sense of, we were even talking about way back, we talked about staff kids on campus.
Exactly.
And, the kids are wandering away from the rooms, and they're getting involved with things they're not supposed to be getting involved with. And that's just becoming more and more of a repeated thing.
Yeah.
And so now it's like, okay, now we have to have a conversation about
Let's take care of this. Yeah. Okay, so we've said that your contracts, your faculty manual both need to have a clear understanding so far of what those policies, procedures are that they can, quote unquote, I don't want to say get in trouble for, but get in trouble for, be talked to about, have a plan created for their overcoming whatever it is, structured, and then expected to be reviewed upon. So there is the parameters within the contract for what those expectations are, and then we have the time and the facility and the people that will be involved with whatever the initial conversation is. Each of those needs to be reviewed. Each of those needs to be purposeful. They can't not be purposeful.
Right.
Assuming that we have time to set up an appointment, assuming that we have time, and it can be between two people and whoever the hiring head is, the head of the school, the administrator, and one faculty member, assuming all that to be fine and kosher. Okay, now what? Now how are we handling that conversation?
Yeah, so that's the next step.
Well, they're gonna know.
Yeah.
Let's give our professional adults credit to know. They're going to know why they're sitting there. But it could be the case that you do want to offer some thoughts prior to the meeting as to why they're going to be sitting there. So why you're calling the meeting in the first place. whether or not it's best to surprise them with that information or to get their first blush reaction. I'd say probably most likely not. I think if my experience is, if I am able to offer them more time to prepare, I'm doing myself and them a service, because we can get deeper in the conversation
Right.
and past whatever the first defensive, I'm going to throw a shield up, would be, and actually hopefully get to a secondary, okay, well, this is why, not, I'm actually not doing that.
Yeah.
Maybe they can come more quickly to this is the why I'm doing that.
Yeah, to bring up our other conversation we had on the first part of this series with instructional improvement, we should be expecting that these conversations should be fairly simple,
Mm-hmm.
because if we have hired like-minded individuals who want to keep the glory of God first, and then, understanding that this ministry, we have to be all on the same page. And of course, whenever the school has a policy, they're going to enforce that policy.
Mm-hmm.
Then it should be a simple, hey, we both know you're over the line on this one. Let's fix that. How can I help you fix it?
And then, exactly. And from there, you're creating the plan. So hopefully that is also in the process that is enumerated and enunciated in the documents.
Yeah.
That from the first conversation, there will be 2 conversations to come. One is a follow-up at the appointed time, and the second one is either a final where we've said, okay, we have overcome this, we're putting this behind us, or we need a fourth conversation now because it's not overcome.
Yeah. If I could offer any perhaps suggestion as to why this topic was even asked for us to be discussing, I have to assume that, and I mean, I've been there too, so it's not just an assumption. I feel like I'm basing this on some experience as well, that why are these topics difficult? And a lot of times it's in anticipation of they're not going to like what I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately this is going to resolve with either me giving in or they're taking a hike. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to risk losing another teacher. I don't want to risk, having to find another replacement, as difficult as it is right now. And my answer to that, my response to that, whether it be with faculty or with students, families that break off because of, at the end of the day, my mind continues to go back to Paul as he's going into these cities. He's preaching the truth. He knows he's going to be pushed back against by these people who should know better. And yet, what are we told? That when they completely reject it, he turns around, he shakes the dust off his shoes, and he keeps moving.
Moves along. Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Getting to that point as a school leader, while you don't want to just be loosey-goosey with it, of just like, well, I have a problem with you, see ya. I have a problem with you, see ya.
Yeah.
Instead of just going down that extreme, there is if we have confidence in these policies, they are here for a reason, and it's a good reason, then we shouldn't have to really struggle, how do I approach this person?
Yeah.
How do I, make it seem as if I'm still on their side, but I need them to fix it. At the end of the day, we are doing what we've set out to do. We are holding the line. We are being the light, the salt that we've been called to be. And we want to assume that the teachers that we've hired are they're in the same boat.
Yeah.
And if not, then it's time to start looking around.
But we need to go ahead and have confidence in the Lord, in that those prayerful decisions to bring those people on were not foolish.
Right.
So treat them like professionals, and professionals elsewhere would receive the same sort of review and the same sort, and hard conversations happen all around us all the time.
All the time.
So as difficult as they may be in the moment, or as difficult as someone who perhaps came into the role as a teacher and wasn't did not see themselves as an administrator because they didn't even want to deal with conflict. Maybe these sort of things this is their growth, and maybe those administrators need to find someone who has been a longer time leader, has already invested in and has seen the experience, or has the experience of working through these things. And maybe the teacher became administrator who didn't have some of those soft skills or those skills, seeks those out from somebody else. Maybe that would be a point of strength, because again, we do need to set the culture to be able to have these conversations and it not be the end of seeing that person on a Sunday and not being able to look them in the face.
Right.
And that was another point we want to make sure we talked about, is oftentimes we are in those situations where we are going to be in Christian fellowship outside of the workplace, which makes, for many of the school leaders that we have listening to us, you are going to be on a Wednesday night, or on, in your small group, or on a Sunday especially, or in a church activity, seeing these people even for a sixth or a seventh day of your week over and over again after you just had a conversation with them. So that's something to attack from the front. That's something to make sure that in the conversations, in the contract, in the faculty manual, that there's even an expectation that we will handle things professionally as a professionals in the building, but that relationships that will occur elsewhere will be, and whether or not that's actually how viable that is, how easy that is, you're the leader. You're the one who's going to set that tone. So
yeah, and I know we kind of jumped to the extreme, which our next conversation that we are going to have on our next episode is getting to that end game.
We'll be smiling the whole time.
Yeah,
smiling,
that'd be wonderful
as we talk about cutting people, letting them go.
But at the same time, going back to the middle ground of, okay, we've identified the infringement. So having a clear path forward of, okay, the phrase "let the punishment fit the crime," is definitely in my head, because you're going to have policies that are big deals.
Sure, yeah.
Versus those that are like it's still there for a good reason, and yes, you're not hurting anything necessarily, other than just everybody being on the same page. Yeah. So having consequences that make sense, is to the point we brought up. So we have in fact, I think it's even it's a written rule. I keep debating with myself. It's actually written down, or if it's an unwritten rule, where we ask the guys to wear ties, the teachers guys to wear ties twice a week, just to elevate. And it's not because we think that the tie is what really sets us apart, but I've often thought, because I think there have been weeks even for me where, wait a minute, did I wear a tie twice this week?
Yeah.
I can't remember now. That's why I try to keep a routine. Mondays and Wednesdays. Mondays and Wednesdays. Okay, well, I'm not going to look at you, Mark, every single day. I'm like, okay, you got one tie this week. I'm going to check that one off, and we went throughout the rest of the week without that second check. So here we go. What do we do? What's the next step from there?
Yeah.
Which hopefully is just a quick conversation of, hey, could you try to get it in this week?
Yeah.
To me, that's a less of a deal than, if you were to walk in a tank top to teach Bible class and be like, Mark,
well, first we'll start.
We don't want to do that.
Mark, you look good in that today. You look good, Mark. Now let's go.
I wouldn't say that. No.
I'd be nice. I'd be nice about it. But I think you mentioned consequences. Of course, even that informal conversation is a quote unquote consequence, is a result of the action. So really, between those informal conversations and perhaps a more formal, like sit down, we need this to occur. We're going to construct a plan around you to help you, and we will now begin. Whereas previously we were not inspecting what we expected until this became a problem, now we will be routinely inspecting what we expect, whatever it is. And maybe there is a table, a chart created for the tracking of tardies.
Yeah.
There are going to be some schools, there will be some of those next up echelon of issues that will result in a bite out of the salary.
Yeah.
And so those are the ones I would say you have to have those written down. Those cannot be not written down if they're not. Good luck not getting sued, but good luck keeping good people around who don't have a clear eye on what it is they're doing wrong that could affect them monetarily. But if you have those rules, have a good accountant, make sure you stick to them. So in my experience, we definitely had those coming concerning tardies turning into absences, and absences winding up costing people once they cross the threshold in their contract. So making sure. Oh, and those, by the way, those work those out with HR. That is worth hiring somebody who has done HR, or if you don't have your own HR people, and making sure it is extremely clear what is in your contract and allowed to be counted as an to be counted in that way as a miss. How it would work and not work with expectations concerning, depending on your size, FMLA, and things like that. So be in conversation with and make sure what you have, you fully have had thought experiments concerning someone who comes in and they miss the first 30 days of school because of X. What are you going to do? Mm-hmm. They miss 15 here, and then they miss 5 at the very end. What are you going to do? Have an understanding of that. Have even a chart of what your expectations would be, and do that with your board so they know, and then enact what you play out, what you play out in that way. And really, I think with that being said, the only part of, not the only part left, but the part we have left to do will be our next episode. And that's what we're talking about letting him go. And we're not going to talk about that right now because I don't want to cry. I don't want to cry.
No, just to, I can wrap this conversation up. Hopefully we can have those informal conversations that really take care of a lot of things. And to me, the bigger issues that we have is because we just don't jump in and have those conversations. We're like, well, I'm going to give them an opportunity to improve it on their own. Just jump in, have that conversation. 9 times out of 10, I would even say, hopefully that would solve it. Mm-hmm. Just jump in, have that conversation, pray together if it's a bigger issue, and work together to see improvement. But if it gets further down the line of, okay, we've had the informal conversation, now I'm going to have you meet with this person, now I'm going to have you meet with me, whatever it is that you have lined up, you have that clear path forward and you've checked off all those boxes so that when the time comes that we're not talking about, it's no surprise to anybody. Again, it's just one of those, okay, this makes sense. Mm-hmm. Here we go.
Absolutely. Hey, let's hear from our Christian Administrator Spotlight now.
Oh, yeah. Who are we shouting out today?
I guess we're not hearing from them. They're going to hear from us.
They're going to hear from us.
Are you ready to hear from us, Mr. Dr. Christian Administrator Spotlight? You're going to hear from us now.
That was interesting.
That's okay.
So the Spotlight segment today is focused on Pastor John McKnight.
Oh, Dr. McKnight, thank you so much for all you have done for the Maryland Association of Christian Schools and Christian schools in Maryland who don't even realize what you and your father have done for us. Dr. McKnight was most recently the pastor of Reformation Bible Church there in Harford County, Maryland, and he prior to and then along with those roles found himself in close leadership of the school ministry the church had, and he regales us often with stories of Governor Glendenning and himself and his father and Max at that time and Roger Solomon and what they did to secure for us the opportunities to have church schools in the state of Maryland that were unencumbered in K-5 through 12th grade education with the laws and regulations and the Department of Education mandates that are actually there in many of our sister states that are far more red, which is not saying much because in Maryland we're about as blue as blue gets, but they're far more red and would be expected to allow for more open-ended policies for schools like ours. Maryland is pretty free, mm-hmm. and it's a blessing, and it's a liberty. It's a blessing, and it's a liberty long struck and long held because of guys like him. So Pastor McKnight, Dr. McKnight, thank you so much for all you do. I still want to get in those files, and I still want to reap the history of Max and put it into a book and publish it so we have it, but he hasn't allowed me to do that yet, and I'm sad about that, but we'll get there sometime.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Christian Principles Podcast. Thank you for listening in. Thank you for being an active listener. This episode, this topic was because of responses to our conversations, wanting us to talk about these things. So let us know if there's other topics you would like to hear from us.
Absolutely. Make sure you come out to us and see us on the March Administrator Retreat there for the Max Association. But remember, all are invited. It's the first 30. Email us at info@christianprinciplespodcast.com. Thanks for going with us today.